but we'd liberate those tanks. But we rode tanks most of the time.
You rode the tank, but at night, where were you staying?
Well, you go into a house, and I always went down in the basement of the house, and they always had jars and fruit and stuff down in there. Mm-hmm. You know, where they can't. I just take my rifle and knock off all the empty jars and crawl up on a shelf down in the basement. That's where you stayed at night. Mm-hmm. Wherever you could find a place to lay down, that's where you stayed. Mm-hmm. There wasn't no particular bed that you could sleep in or anything like that. Mm-hmm. At all. And so we stayed in that and stayed in foxholes. That's about the only thing you could do during the war.
Did mail ever catch up with you? Did you ever
Yes. Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. And hot food caught up with us sometime because we ate K rations most of the time. And then we did get hot food, we'd get diarrhea so bad it was pitiful. And you had to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And I remember the first time I ever got hot food was hot wheat mash or whatever you want to call it. And it went through me like like something else, you know. But when you're eating K rations, you're eating cheese and wheat crackers and things like that, which actually is not good for your system. Mm-hmm. But that's what you had to eat, and you had to carry with you, and to carry your cigarettes with you. I never did smoke. All the time I grew up, I never drank. I never took a drink of anything, and I never smoked. But I always carried in my back 2 pouches on my ammunition belt cigarettes, Camel cigarettes, because they was given to us. The people that made the cigarettes was smart, you know, because they gave them to us. And Zippo lighters they gave to us. And I'd always carry those in there for my men in case they run out, you know. But I got to the point where I got so nervous during the battle that I had to start smoking myself. And I smoked 54 years before I gave it up. But I gave it up on account of my heart. On account of my heart. I had to.
Yeah.
I just made myself. It was a hard thing to do, but I gave it up. Mm-hmm. And that so the tobacco industry was smart by giving the men cigarettes because they got hooked on them.
I guess they knew what they were doing.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And one of these towns, I don't know where it was, is right after I crossed the Rhine River, that we took a little town, and I went around this little town on the right-hand side like I always do. And a little girl in a farmhouse come out and stopped me and told me there's German soldiers in the barn asleep. So I thought, well, I could go check and see. So I went in the barn and checked, and they couldn't find anything downstairs. So the little girl pointed up to the hayloft. So I went up there to the hayloft, and I got 36 German prisoners out of that one barn by myself.
36?
36.
And you walked in that barn alone?
Yes, because they didn't know how many men was on the outside of the barn or how many more men was inside. So see, that's not on my record whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And so what I had to do, I had to bring them back to this little town, and me and one more man had to stay there all night with all these prisoners till the army come up and picked them up the next morning. That was a horrifying experience, staying in a German town with that many prisoners.
Yeah.
Right. And another thing, another town we took, I had a went around thing, and I heard a motorcycle. And I said, I'll wait here and see where it's coming from. So I seen it coming up the road, and I had two German soldiers on it. And I thought to myself, well, now I'll get 2 birds with 1 stone this time. And I aimed my rifle and missed them both. But it got close to them because they turned around real fast and went back the other way. So that was the experience. And my thing of it, my gun jammed. Just that one shot that jammed on me. And it's a good thing they turned around and left, because I'd have been a dead person.
Okay. I'm going to adjust this just a little bit. We're still.
Okay.
I don't want to cut off the top of your head.
Okay. That's okay.
That's why I keep checking it.
Okay, all right.
So you didn't get those two, but
No, I didn't get those two, but I got the ones out of the barn.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, right before that.
Now, did you speak any German? Could you understand these
Yeah, I
people?
can understand some of it. Sie wohin du gehen des Abendtagen? Ja.
Okay, I have to transcribe this.
What do you have for supper?
Thank you.
Okay. And yay, not too much, but we had translators with us at certain times, and we would learn from them, from the German soldiers, and what's coming and what to expect on up above us and ahead of us, and so forth and so on.
Were medics with you at all times?
Oh yes, and I would never down a medics in my life. I told the medics, that the little boy we had all the time, if he would take my pay the rest of the time I was in service, I would give it to him, because he was terrific. He was terrific. Even to the German soldiers, he was good to them. Mm-hmm. I know one time we come up on this little town, and medics had already gave us, one German soldier was wounded pretty bad, and I shot a morphine. And this little boy come along with us, our medics, and he gave him another shot. And the German didn't last very long after that. And killed him, actually.
Oh.
Too much of it
Yeah.
at one time. But
when you're in the field, though, it's hard to be.
But the medics were terrific, because that's the first thing you hollered for when you got hit, with the medics. Mm-hmm. Or even the men that I know, you could hear them hollering medics all the time. And but the worst thing was the screaming meanies that I feared most of all. That was a gun, well, they call them rockets now, but they all went off at the same time, and they screamed in the air when they went through, and it was a horrifying sound, the screaming meanies. But you can hear the shells coming in or going out. You know which way they's going after a certain length of time in the service.
And you could judge.
Yeah, where they's coming or where they's going.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you were drafted.
Yeah.
Did anybody from here stay with you throughout this, or did you just
No. No, nobody at all.
Nobody at all.
Uh-uh.
But you made new friends.
Yes, made new friends, that's right. Yes, that's
Do you
right.
still have contact with any of those friends?
No, I don't. There's one I'm gonna live down to Flatwoods that was in my division.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know it until we was in Czechoslovakia, on the border of Czechoslovakia. I didn't know who he was then, but I got acquainted with him and come to find out, we never did talk where we was from or anything. And I come after I got to get a thing through the mail from my division every month, and had his name in there, and I come to know who it was. Mm-hmm. But nobody stayed with me. Nobody stayed with me. Even in basic training down there in Alabama, there wasn't anybody from Ashland or Russell or anybody in Greenham County. Now they stayed with me down in Fort Thomas, because all of us stayed there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And how long were you in Fort Thomas?
Not very long, about a week.
About a week. I thought that's what you had said.
Yeah,
I know
about a week.
Okay.
Right.
Now you said you were on the Czechoslovakian border.
Yeah.
And I see. Was this the last place you
Hup.
were?
Right above Hup. It's in the mountains.
Okay.
Right there is Hup.
And how long were you there?
Oh, we was there maybe 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's after the war. This was after the war. The war had ended right here.
Okay.
And we stayed there, and then they brought us back to another town, which I don't know which it was, where it was, but they brought us back to another town. We stayed about 3 days there. Then we had to get on a train and go all the way back to France, to Camp Philip Morris. There was nothing but tents, that's all was there. And that's where we shipped out at to come back home.
When you found, how did you find out that the war had ended?
Well, over the tank radios. We found out that President Roosevelt died through the radios on our tanks, because I told you we rode tanks all the time,
Rode the tank.
most of the time.
And were you inside the tanks in the movies?
No, we stand just on top
just
of
like in the movies, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Standing on top of it, or sitting on top of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you could hear these radios.
Oh yeah, you could
so
hear
you
that.
got the news.
That's where we got the news of President Roosevelt dying, from the news from the radio on the tanks.
What was your reaction when you heard the war was over after going through
It was
all that?
great. I knew I was going back home to my baby and my wife. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you went to France.
Right.
And how long did you have to stay in that sea of tents?
Not very long, maybe 4 days, and we got on Queen Elizabeth. I come home on Queen Elizabeth and docked in New York, and went from New York to Jefferson Barracks, Missouri. And that's where I was discharged from, Jefferson Barracks. And my pay, I got travel pay, I got $25, and total amount they gave me was $154.71.
Now, a couple of the gentlemen I've interviewed said that when you were released, you got a clean uniform.
That's right.
And then what happened?
Well, they give us traveling pay, and I got on the train and went home.
That was it. They just turned you loose.
They turn you loose, that's right.
Turned you loose.
They take you to the train depot and turn you loose and say, that's it.
So did you bring the train? Did you come home on the train?
Yeah, but my wife lived in Sioux City, Iowa at that time, and that's where I went from Jefferson City, Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, to up there to where she was at. Then we come back here and started our family and our home here.
And how big was your little girl when you first saw her in Sioux City?
Well, she was about a little over 2 years old.
2 years old.
Yeah.
And that's the first time you'd seen her since she was an infant?
No. My wife
No.
come to Wisconsin and stayed with me there. We lived on a big farm. We stayed on a big farm area in Wisconsin. We rented an apartment there and we stayed there. I had to get a bus out of Camp McCoy over to where this road was, and then walk about 3 miles up to this big farmhouse. And of course, we would go into Sparta to get our groceries, but you know, she was just a little tot then, just big enough to walk, really.
Well, you've done excellent with this. Is there anything that you would like, any story from when you were overseas that you would like to tell that you didn't include in what we've said? Or is there any memorable good time or bad time that you'd like to add for your tape? Because this is forever, you know.
Well, really, I didn't get no R&R at all. Nothing like that. We fought all the way through. And so the only relaxation we had was the bath.
Yeah, you've talked about that bath a couple of times.
Oh yeah, that was
that's
great.
your most memorable.
Yeah, right. It really was. And my 2 buddies getting killed, and you know, I blame myself for it today. Even today, I blame putting those boys there. But yet,
you did what you had to do.
I think about them every day. Every day.
And I'm sure you really honored them with your son's name.